whether you were into NASCAR or not, you knew about Richard Petty. And then we kind of realized that we grew up directly in Earnhardt country. So knowing the spirit of what Earnhardt was, and being close to family member, going to school with family members of his and everything. And just being dialed into NASCAR, just not dialed in really. Like when Jimmie entered, I thought probably we were so obsessed with our own outings. I don't think we were paying attention to any sports or anything. We were like in the band world. Like Jimmie probably wasn't paying attention to a lot except racing. But I think as the dust settled in those times of our lives, those seasons of our lives, what we would pick up about, or what I know that I personally would pick up about Jimmie, was right in line with this principle that our dad had always talked about you don't have to tell people when you've got it. You don't have to say anything. And I don't know how much of a loudmouth Jimmie was early on, but he didn't seem to be a loudmouth. He just seemed to go and perform and go and do it. And his actions showed who he was, who he is. And that seemed to be a little bit different than some of the bravado that was, or maybe I should say some of the obvious bravado, because the bravado is still there. It's a little sharper and a little keener in a weird way. It's just something that I admire a lot. It's like this guy, his actions do all the talking, and the rest is really just handsome integrity. It's really beautiful. So for that to be in NASCAR was a little different than how we had all seen it growing up.
So yeah, where'd that come from, Jimmie?
I don't know, but I could listen to Scott talk about me all day long.
Well, that's a good answer, because if he told you where it came from, I know he was BSing, because there's no way he could have known,
True.
But it's funny because actually, your manager, guys, said, and because this struck me when he said that, Seth, you're like the nicest guy in the world. Not that Scott's not, but that you guys just have different energies. And Jimmie,
not the nicest guy.
but to speak to what you just said about Jimmie too, like Jimmie, I mean, that is your rep. And like, and I've seen it firsthand. I mean, I've told people about, really, I remember one time like trying to get an interview with you after a race and it didn't happen. And then you tracked me down the next weekend and said like something to the effect of, sorry, I didn't have time. And I was like, that is amazing. And that absolutely speaks to your character, because I had never had an athlete do that, and by the way, you're the greatest of all time. So where do you think, I mean, is that a conscious thing, or that came from growing up?
No. And I mean, when I try to analyze, my journey, and of course, along the way throughout the years, labels are put on you, some you like, some you don't. And, social media comes along and opinions weigh in far more frequently than you care to. And, so questions kind of have swirled around this for a long time. And when I look back and kind of look at my path in motorsport, it was a passion for my father and my grandfather that became my passion. And we, of course, had dreams, along the way. And I had dreams to be a winning racer, but I had no clue that it would end up where it has. And I grew up with such simple beginnings, and my mom was a school bus driver. My dad was a heavy equipment operator. It just, I don't know. I think my love of the sport happened in a pure fashion, and it wasn't about being famous, and it wasn't about being a champion. It's about getting on my dirt bike and going riding. And that's just what I wanted to do and loved. And through my career, I had some shining moments as an amateur, and I had things happen to help me get that next opportunity, but I never really shined like a lot of guys around me. And when I finally got my chance in Cup at 25, I was probably 5 years late. Especially now, I'm probably 7, 8 years late. So, that same thing continued to happen, where I had to race for my own reasons. And it wasn't because I was winning, it was because it's what I wanted to do and loved to do. And I think in all of that were lessons. And certainly my parents had an influence on that. My friend group, people I was, around and worked with, all that played into it. But I think that journey is really, really what set me up for how I carried myself when the spotlight was finally on.